Hey everybody! In this video we are going to be exploring Twin 2, this wicked subtractive synthesizer from the legendary company FabFilter. This simple yet effective synth has everything you need if you are after crystal clear and fat, digital or even analog-like sounds. After showing you what it can do, I'm going to show you how to make this. Or this. And even this. Now let's jump over to Ableton and start tweaking knobs and faders. Yay! After you see what this plugin can do, I'm sure you want to add it to your library. You can grab FabFilter Twin 2 in the Warp Academy plugin store. I dropped the direct link in the description below for you. Now let's analyze the interface very shortly. In this section, you can see the oscillators. Now, the cool thing in this, which I really like, is if you click on one of the oscillators, you can open a new tab where you can set the oscillator detune, and if you use a square wave, you can set the PWM, the pulse width modulation, and the oscillator sync. Here you can toggle on and off the oscillator, you can set the octaves and the waveforms. Also, if you are after the digital sound, you can synchronize the phase of every oscillator, clicking on this button. Okay, let me close this tab now. And for every oscillator, you can tweak the level and the panning. If you double click on any parameter, you can type in the values. After you set up your oscillators, you can go to the filters. And the cool thing in this that I really like is you can choose from serial, parallel or per oscillator layout of the filters. So because FabFilter Twin 2 offers two filters, as you can see in serial mode, you can use two filters after each other, but if you are in parallel mode, you are basically using two instances of the same sound that you just built up using the oscillators. You can filter them individually, and after filtering, you can mix them together. And in per oscillator mode, as you can see in the graph, you can use filter 1 to filter oscillator 1 and 3, and filter 2 to filter oscillator 2 and 3. Let me just use the serial mode now. After the filters, you can see your main envelope generator here. And if you click on that, you can instantly tweak any of the parameters here. As you can see, I'm just setting the attack time now. After the envelope generator, the signal goes into the delay FX. Now, Twin 2 offers only one FX, and that is the delay. But this is again a very interesting built-up delay. If you click on any of the boxes, you can set up the right side of the delay effect or the left side of the delay effect. In the delay, we have another filter, but this affects only the delay. You can see them here in these boxes. And as you can see, I can still switch from serial to parallel or per delay mode. Obviously, if you click on the boxes, you can choose the filter type, low pass, high pass, band pass. You can set the roll-off rate from 12 to 24 and to 48 decibels. And which is very interesting for me is you can choose from several filter types and all of them colors the sound in a very different way. So you have FabFilter 1, gentle, raw, tube, etc, etc. So this is a very exciting feature, and obviously like in any other filters, you can set the filter cutoff and the resonance, and also you can turn on or off the filters. And after the delay effects, you have two knobs where you can decide how loud you want to tweak your delay effect and how loud you want to have your dry signal coming from the oscillators and the filters. Also, on every side of the knobs, you can see another knob where you can set the panning. Once you set up your sound, you can start modulating it. And again, this is a very exciting feature in Twin 2 and basically in every FabFilter product, because if you click on this little tab, you can switch between modulation and the keyboard. So now let's go to the modulation. If you click on this plus button, you can choose from controller, LFO, envelope generator, envelope follower, and MIDI source that you can go really crazy with. So for example, let me choose an envelope generator. So this will be like a regular envelope. And if you click on this little plus icon, you can assign the envelope to any parameter. So for example, to the volume or to the level of any oscillator, or to the filter, cutoff, resonance, or anything, basically even the panning. And once you've done with the assigning, this little box appears where you can set the range of the modulation up and down. And of course, for one envelope or for one modulator, you can set almost unlimited amount of modulation target. So as you can see, Twin 2 is very similar to other FabFilter products, and with this little small synthesizer you can create, I would say, pretty exciting sounds, because the modulation section is so smartly built up. In this example, I use an XLFO to modulate the oscillator 1 pen and the oscillator 2 pen. This is a very exciting feature to create nice stereo width to the sound. Now let me break down this preset for you very quickly. As you can see, I'm using two sawtooth oscillators, and I cranked up the sync on the first one to 1.3, and on the second one I use the third octave, but I didn't touch the sync. The third oscillator is deactivated. And on the filters, I use two low-pass filters, and the second one, the raw filter type, is only here to add some nice grittiness to the sound. So let me compare it to you with filter 2 and without filter 2. So as you can hear without filter 2, this is, well, for me at least, it is a very dry, very digital sounding synth. But with filter 2 it's a lot better. For me, it's a lot rustier and a lot more lo-fi sounding. Now I use an envelope generator for filter 1 frequency, as you can see here. And I also mapped an XY controller for filter 1 frequency that I modulated here. Because as you can see, when the drums come in, I filter the sound to add some more space for the drums. And the interesting part is this XLFO, where I set the sync to 3, so I'm not synchronizing my LFO movement to the DAW tempo, but it is running free, and I set the frequency to 0.78 Hz. And what I did with the oscillator pen is I just dragged this plus sign to oscillator 1 pen and oscillator 2 pen. And I also dragged it to filter 2 pen, but actually I'm not using it. This is why this little button is activated. So right now I'm bypassing filter 2 movement, filter 2 modulation. So this is the sound. I'm not using any delay effects here, but only Ableton stock reverb plugin. Just before we get going, I would like to invite you to join the community by hitting subscribe and activating notifications. That way you won't miss a beat and you will get the heads up as soon as we post them. Okay, so what I love in this preset is how the LFO drags the master tune up and down. As you may heard, I created a very nice vibrato effect using that. Okay, so what I did to achieve this is I click on this plus button, I activated a new X LFO, and I drag this plus button and assign it to the master tune knob. The only thing I had to do is set the frequency of the modulation and the range on this little box that is just appeared. But I'm going to delete this one because I don't need another instance from the same modulation. And let me break down this sound very quickly. So as you can see on oscillator 1, I used a square wave, but I used the pulse width modulation to achieve this very narrow kind of square wave. And on the second one, I used another square wave, but I didn't tweak the pulse width modulation. After the oscillators, I used one bandpass filter because the first one is deactivated. And the only thing I made in the modulation section is obviously I just had the main envelope generator where I use some plucky kind of curve to it. I use another envelope generator to modulate the vibrato effect. So what I wanted to do is deactivate it at the very start of the sound. On the envelope generator 2, I used a huge attack time, and actually it is almost 3 seconds. And I assigned it to the master tune modulation. So what it does is it fades in the modulation once you hit your note, and another envelope generator for the filter. So as you can see, I used this shape to modulate the cutoff of the second bandpass filter. The other thing you need to know is I used 3 voices of unison and I spread it to 6% to make it really nice, warm, analog kind of sound. Okay, let's jump on to the third example. It's a nice down-tempo kind of stuff, and this pad is really nice and lush to it. The only thing I added after FabFilter Twin 2 is a vocoder and a reverb, so let me show the sound, the pure sound without these effects. So what I love in this preset, in this sound, is that I can filter the individual oscillators. And that is what I set up here. As you can see, I chose the per osc option on the filters. So I'm using a low pass filter on oscillator 1 and a band pass filter on oscillator 2. I'm sure that you can hear this little arpeggiated kind of sound in the preset. And that is oscillator 2. Let me show it to you. Beautiful little sound. And that is created by XLE41. So what I did here is, let me open the oscillator tab, is I drag this plus button and assign it to oscillator 2 detune and oscillator 2 level. And because I'm using this stepper kind of modulation on XLE41, it can create a very nice pitch and envelope modulation stepper kind of effect, like an arpeggiator. And all along with oscillator 1, it creates this beautiful effect. Now on the filters, as I told you, I use a low pass filter on oscillator 1 and a band pass filter on oscillator 2. But to make the sound a little paddy, I use an envelope generator, the second envelope generator on filter 1 cutoff, to add some nice filter movement, filter sweep to it. And also on the main envelope generator, I added some attack and some release time to make the sound really like a pad. Okay, and one more thing, this preset contains the delay effect, because as you can see, I'm using different delay time feedback on the right and on the left of the signal. And I also filtered the delay voices. First, a bandpass filter on FabFilter 1 filter type, and a low pass filter, and both of them are on huge resonance. The low pass filter is on gentle, so both of them are pretty nice and clean filter types. And these are on serial mode. So this creates a very nice, lush, filtered, analog kind of sound to this pad. I also used 3 voices of unison, and 9% of spread between the unison voices. And to make the sound even more dreamy, I added a vocoder and a reverb. As you can see, this little synth has everything you need for some very nice and shiny sounds that you can apply into every style and genre. So I hope you enjoyed this overview, and don't forget you can grab this plugin from our web shop by just clicking on the link below. See you soon. Peace!